Chapter 24, Farley's Tale. Disclaimer: I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0, Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 24, Farley's Tale 9:20 a.m. Tuesday, 23 August 1995, Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. Harry landed hard, wobbled, stumbled forward, but miraculously managed to stay on his feet. Looking around, he grinned at Sirius, Remus, and Charlie. "Well done, cub. You're finally starting to get the hang of portkeys," Remus said. Movement from the right caught his attention, and he turned to see Alexander, the reserve's head dragon handler, striding towards them. Accompanying him were Delilah and Anthony, two other dragon handlers. "Glad to see you finally back," Alexander greeted them. Harry cocked his head at the man. There was something hard about him, as though he was on edge. The fact that the other two with him kept glancing from the four of them to the top of the ridge beyond, which was the Great Canyon where the dragons lived, had Harry starting to feel as though something was wrong. "Good to be back, boss," Charlie said, shaking Alexander's hand. "How'd it go?" "What was the problem?" Alexander asked. Everyone suddenly looking at him, had Harry realizing Thathua was expected to answer. "Something a bunyip had been getting in and stealing the dragon eggs," he replied. "It got 3 of the 4 clutches before we even got there, which was why the dragons were so on edge and not letting any of the handlers in." "So it was a bunyip?" Alexander asked. "We saw it in the newspaper, that article of yours, Harry, but until Wed heard it from you, we weren't sure whether to believe it or not," Anthony said. "Believe it," Charlie stated grimly. "That thing was as mean and as ugly as anything that I've ever seen." "But it's gone now?" Delilah asked. "The eggs are safe." "Yeah, we caught it," Harry replied. "And the dragons roasted the thing, melted the bunyip and the cage. It was into nothing but a charred mess," Sirius added grimly. "The dragons are back to normal now," Charlie said, "so we took the first portkey home." "Don't forget that Harry's got an invitation to go back to watch the eggs hatch," Remus said. "An invitation? From who?" Alexander asked. "Dankrum, the lead dragon of the Australian Weir," Harry shrugged. Alexander stared hard at him for a second before shaking his head. To either side of him, Anthony and Delilah simply stared, both of their jaws slack. "Has Charlie explained the significance of that?" Alexander finally asked. "Yes, sir," Harry replied. "And I'll be sure to take my new magical camera with me to record it." "Omnioculars would be even better," Delilah said. "They can record the entire hatching, not just a couple of seconds at a time like a magical photograph would do." Alexander eyed her for a moment. "Good call. Order a pair in for the lad. You know, it's not just Harry that got that invitation," Sirius said offhandedly. "Charlie?" Alexander asked, sounding hopeful. "Sorry, boss," Charlie replied with a grin. "Not one of us. Harry's girl, Daphne, is the lucky one. How in Merlin's name did that happen?" Alexander asked incredulously. Harry shrugged. "I was talking with Daphne, using the magic mirrors that Sirius gave me while I was with the dragons so that she could meet them too. Dankrum just invited her all by herself. I didn't ask or anything." Harry blinked at his boss. Yes, he could understand that this was a big deal, but for a man of his age and someone so rough to look like he was about to burst into tears was something that Harry simply couldn't get his head around. "How's things been here?" Charlie asked, and Harry was thankful to him for breaking the tension. At least that's what he thought would happen. Instead, it only made things worse. All 3 handlers suddenly went very still, their heads or eyes flicking to the ridge once again, not that Harry could see what they were looking at with the forest between here and there. "Funny you should ask," Alexander replied, his eyes now firmly fixed on Harry. "Come with me, my lad." Harry glanced nervously at Sirius, then Charlie, then Remus, but none of them helped when Alexander's great, muscular arm landed around his shoulders and simply steered Harry away. They walked in silence for nearly 100 meters, but instead of making their way up the hill towards the top of the ridge where Harry expected, they walked around the base of it, only stopping when the view between them and the top of the ridge was no longer blocked by the forest. Alexander turned him towards the ridge and gestured, as though looking was explanation was enough. Which it was. There was a dragon crouched on the very top of the ridge, its head currently facing out over the canyon beyond. That in itself may have been slightly unusual, except Harry blinked at it. It was green. Green. Dragons weren't supposed to be green. Quickly, he amended that thought. Dragons in the Romanian Dragon Sanctuary weren't supposed to be green. Hungarian horntails were black, as were Norwegian ridgebacks, while the Ukrainian ironbelly was grey. Even the pairs of Portuguese longsnouts and Swedish shortsnouts weren't green, being red and blue-grey respectively. The closest that the reserve had to a green dragon was the Romanian longhorn, but its scales were a green so dark that most of the time they appeared closer to black, not this vibrant green color. Harry knew of only one type of dragon that looked like the one that was now staring back at him. He'd even seen it up close and spoken to one of them, but that was nearly a year ago, back in Britain, where dragons that particular colour could be found. The common Welsh green, but they only lived in Britain. There wasn't a single one anywhere else in the world. What's that? He asked. Common Welsh green, Alexander stated simply. Thought you'd know that. Harry glanced up at him before his eyes were drawn back to the anomaly. We don't have any common Welsh greens here, he said, before quickly adding, do we? There was, after all, the possibility that one had been added to the reserve while he'd been away. We're not supposed to, Alexander confirmed. That one turned up yesterday. Won't let any of us near it, and the other dragons are being rather protective of it as well. Okay, Harry asked. Well, off you go, lad. Talking to dragons is your speciality. Go find out what it's doing here and where it came from, Alexander said jovially before simply turning around and walking away. For a full minute, Harry stared after him, but Alexander neither looked back nor altered his pace towards the big lodge and his office. Finally, he turned back to the dragon. The common Welsh green hadn't moved a muscle. For a fleeting instant, he considered pulling his shrunken trunk from his pocket, retrieving his nimbus and flying up there. Somehow, he thought that would be a bad idea. Startling any dragon, especially one unknown to him, was never a good idea. Instead, he did the smart thing and began the climb. It didn't take long for the dragon to notice him. He saw the great head swing towards him, which gave him a better view of the two spiked horns on top of its head. The closer that he walked, the more detail that he could see. While big, it wasn't as large as a horntail, nor quite as long as an opali. Ordinarily, Harry wouldn't be worried. Even knowing that none of the other dragon handlers had been able to approach the dragon wasn't something that he needed to be worried about. He was, after all, speaker for dragons. Thus, he kept on, keeping as steady a pace as possible on the uphill climb. The ground had just started to level out when the sound of great wings beating the air drew his eye upwards. Two dragons, a horntail and an ironbelly, were coming in hard and fast, obviously aiming to plant themselves between him and the foreign dragon. One look was enough for Harry to break out in a massive grin, even as he raised his hand in greeting. Ramaranth, Grulith, he called. Both dragons paused mid-flight, hovering just above the ground, their long necks stretching down towards him. Speaker, speaker, you have returned, Ramaranth bugled. It is good to see you return to us, speaker, Grulith called. As they were landing, Harry looked past them to see the green's reaction. The dragon had risen and taken a single step towards him, and he noted that the orange-red that was in the dragon's eyes had morphed into a green with yellow undertones. The instant that his two friends had landed, Harry raced forward before throwing his arms around firstly Ramaranth and then leaping across to Grulith. How are you both? I've missed you, he said. We are well, speaker, Grulith replied. And the hatchlings? Harry asked. Ramaranth looked over her shoulder, and for a split second, Harry expected to see four tiny dragons come tumbling over the top of the ridge towards him. The hatchlings are well, speaker, and have asked for you each day that you have been gone, Ramaranth replied. I look forward to seeing them, Harry said earnestly first, though I believe there is a visitor. He motioned towards the green, standing back, watching and listening to them. "May I?" he asked. Simultaneously, the two great dragons inclined their heads, a movement that Harry copied before walking between them. "Hello," he said cautiously. "Welcome to Romania and the Weir. Speaker, do you not remember me?" the dragon asked. Harry's mind raced. Could it be? He had only ever met a single common Welsh green. At the first task of the Triwizard tournament, there was a Welsh green that the Beauxbatons champion Fleur de Lacre had had to get past. After the task and everything had settled down, Harry had gone down to the pens where the dragons were kept with Neville, even if Neville had stayed well back, where he could barely see the dragons, and Harry had spoken to each of the dragons, including the Welsh green. Farley's. Harry asked, dragging the name up from the depths of his memory, hoping that he had it right. "Yes, Speaker, it is I," she replied. "It's good to see you again," Harry said. "How are your eggs? Have they hatched?" "Indeed, Speaker, 5 hatchlings cracked their shells some moons ago," she replied, and Harry noted that the yellow flecks in her eyes calmed somewhat. "That's wonderful," he exclaimed. Then, taking a breath, he asked the big question, "Why have you come here, Farleys?" "Speaker," Ramaranth said, interrupting any answer that she would have given, "Memzath has asked that you be brought to the Weir Council to hear Farley's tale." Harry nodded. While he suspected that Alexander and the others would want to know sooner rather than later, the fact that he could find out at all meant that they'd accept however long it took. "Of course," Harry said. "Might we go now?" Ramaranth simply inclined her head before squatting down somewhat. "It would be my honor to take you, Speaker." 0v0, 9:55 a.m. Tuesday, 23 August 1995, Romanian, Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. If Harry had expected a fast, direct flight from the ridge above the dragon handler's camp to Memzath's cave, which was also the secret entrance to the Weir Council Bowl, then Harry was sadly, greatly mistaken. No sooner had he climbed up on Ramaranth's back and settled between two of her spine ridges than she turned, bounded across to the cliff edge, and all but fell off. Her wings snapped open, and she took that first, important downsweep of her wings. To either side of her, Grulith and Farley's flew, each a head and neck length behind as they swept through the canyon, barely 10 meters from the ground. Which dragon was the first to take note of him? Harry wasn't sure, but he sure knew the precise moment. The Speaker. The Speaker has returned. The Speaker. Welcome back, Speaker. The sentiment was bugled up and down the canyon, even as every dragon took to the sky, winging after them. The dragon's echoes were nearly enough to deafen Harry, not that he really noticed. Instead, he was too busy laughing and waving and calling greetings to all those, he knew the name of which was more than he realized. The hatchlings Harath, Poteth, Specketh, and Pains were the only ones who dared to fly in front of Ramaranth, and even that had more to do with getting close to Harry than it was to do with their mother. Before long, though, Ramaranth landed in front of Memzath's cave, where they were met by the great Horntail himself. "Speaker, it is good that you have returned," Memzath said. "It's good to see you too, Memzath," Harry replied. Before any more could be said, the Weir leader turned and led the way into the cave. Harry made to dismount, but Ramaranth was having none of that, and thus Harry was carried all the way through the tunnel to the great hidden bowl. Once there, he quickly swung his leg over and slipped to the ground, managing only a quick thanks before Ramaranth took flight and winged her way to perch on one of the tiers that rose above and around the bowl. It took a surprisingly short amount of time before every dragon had gathered and taken their places, leaving only 3 with Harry still on the ground: Memzath, Farleys, and Tyriath, the eldest of all the dragons in the Weir. "Speaker, we have eagerly awaited your return to us," Memzath began, having bugled the Weir into silence. "Thank you, Memzath. It is good to be back," Harry replied. Giving the Weir leader a bow, "I was asked to bring greetings to you and to all dragons of the Romanian Weir from Dankram, the Weir leader of the Australasian Weir. They are far distant in the world from all other dragons and Weirs and often feel forgotten. Your greetings to them caused great joy, and they wish their names to be remembered to you in return. Memzath inclined his head, a slightly deeper bow than Harry was used to seeing him give. They honor us. Know, speaker, that they, like all dragons, are respected and remembered. Were you able to help them in their time of need? I was, Weir leader. Harry replied there was a predator, a thief that was sneaking in and stealing the eggs of the Opelies. As Harry expected, there was an instant uproar at the audacity of a creature, of anyone who would do this. Indeed, after talking with the dragons, Harry still didn't understand how the dragon handlers hadn't been flamed for daring to take nesting mothers and their eggs to England the year before. The thief was caught and appropriately punished, Harry said, raising his voice. The remaining eggs are safe and will hatch in due time. Dankram has invited me back to their weir for the joyous occasion. As is appropriate, Memzath said you are the speaker. It may be, Weir leader, Tyriath said slowly, that the speaker has the right of it. He has brought greetings from the far Weir and has taken our greetings to them. He is a bridge that spanned two Weirs from across the world. All Weirs have become insular. Perhaps there is another way. Memzath looked long at the elder dragon before he inclined his head. You are wise, Tyriath. Memzath said wiser still is Farley's, who has come to us from her Weir before these thoughts even came to us. Memzath, why has Farley's come here? Harry asked, hoping that he was finally about to hear the reason. It is best for Farley's to answer for herself, the Weir leader replied. Harry turned to regard the Welsh Green and waited as patiently and as respectfully as he could. Speaker, she began, I have come seeking you. While I did not know that you had been named Speaker for Dragons, I did remember how you spoke to us at the Two-Leg place many moons ago. It was the hope of the dragons of Albion that you would be able to help us, and that Ramaranth might know where you were and how to find you. Harry blinked at the unusual word. Dragons often used words in a different way than humans did, and there were more than a few Weir, for example, that he had to learn, and indeed had taken back to the dragon handlers as well. But Albion, that one was new. No, he decided on second thought. Not new, old, very old. It was a word that Harry had only heard once, maybe twice in history class. Ancient history at that. Albion, the ancient Celtic word for Great Britain. Farley's meant Britain, the dragons of Britain. Which made sense, her being a common Welsh green, and Britain was the only place to find that type of dragon. The dragons of Albion are looking for me, he asked slowly, carefully. And you need my help. What's happened? Two legs have come, Farley said, her eyes spinning with reds and oranges. They have come to all of our weirs and begun transporting us to a faraway island. Transporting you, Harry repeated. His mind was whirling as he absorbed the information and tried to make sense of it. Why would men, wizards, be moving the dragons? He had no doubt that the magicals knew where all the dragons in Britain were. After all, they monitored them in order to ensure the statute of secrecy. But to start moving them all of a sudden, and to an island. Is it just dragons like you, the Greens, who have been moved? He asked. No, speaker. Blacks have been brought to the same island, she replied. Blacks, Harry nodded. That would be Hebridean blacks, he decided, the other species of dragon native to Great Britain. And all the dragons are being moved to an island, he repeated slowly, beginning to pace as he tried to understand why this would be happening. Britain was one of the few places in the world that still allowed their dragons to remain in their own secluded places. Everywhere else, the dragons had been rounded up centuries ago and placed into weirs like this one, where the dragons could be watched and where it was easier to get the bodies of dragons when they died to sell. Harry looked up at the dozens of dragons perched on their ledges as they watched him. As far as he knew, this was a unique place for dragons. No other weir had a council like this. Certainly there was nothing like it at the Australasian Preserve. Suddenly Harry froze. Preserve. The Australasian Dragon Preserve. The Romanian Dragon Reserve. They were just the 5 dragon reserves that were signatories of the contract that he signed. That thought led him to another letter, another potential contract, the one that Charlie had received not long ago. What was it called? He asked himself, before, with a snap of his fingers, he had it. The Dragon Reserve of Great Britain. With the possible answer worked out, Harry looked up at all of the dragons again before settling on Memzath and Farley's. I think I understand what has been happening. He said slowly. It is possible that the two legs from Albion have been gathering the dragons to create a weir like this one. Memzath slowly nodded his great head. Once, long ago, hundreds of moons before even Tariath was hatched, dragons were gathered and brought here. Not all, for this has always been a dragon's weir. Why would the two legs do this to us now? Farley's asked. Harry shook his head. He had an idea, and if it was what he thought it was one that turned his stomach and made him want to throw up. Without asking them, I am not sure. He hedged. With your permission, Memzath, Farley's, I'd like to talk to the two legs who look out for you here and ask their opinion. You are the speaker of dragons. Memzath stated you are trusted as our voice, to speak for us and to our benefit. Harry bowed low at the great respect that he was being given. This wasn't going to be an easy fix, even if Heck could fix it, and Harry was afraid that he'd fail his friends. For a second, he almost wished he was back, hunting mythological creatures that dared to steal dragon eggs. I will return as soon as I can, he promised before turning and striding from the cavern. Chapter 25. Whose side are we on? Disclaimer: I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0 Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 25. Whose side are we on? 12:10 p.m. Tuesday, 23 August 1995. Romanian, Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. Ramaranth's arrival in the middle of the compound caused much less stir among the dragon handlers than it once would have. The fact that a human was riding the dragon, one of only two to have ever done so, also was becoming more commonplace. This was, after all, Harry Potter, and even after the short amount of time that he'd been with them, not to mention what they'd seen at the first task of the Triwizard Tournament, what he could do, no matter how unthinkable, was becoming the norm. Thus, his sliding down the great Hungarian horntail side and striding towards the lodge, a hard, determined expression on his face, simply brought waves and greetings from the few who saw him. Harry, Charlie called, seeing him as he burst through the door. You're back. Come join us, lad, Alexander called. Knowledge of where he'd been and why must have been fairly common knowledge, for he wasn't the only one who made a beeline for the table. A plate of stew was quickly put in front of him as he sat, and he offered a quick thank you to Sirius. Automatically, he picked up the spoon but promptly put it down again. It might have been hours since he'd last eaten, but right then, he wasn't hungry in the slightest. What's the word? Alexander asked. In lieu of an answer, Harry turned to Charlie. Do you still have that letter from that woman who offered you the head dragon handler position in England? He asked. Yeah, I've got it, he replied, sounding confused. I kept it to show the boss. Could you get it? Harry asked. Charlie gave him a quizzical look before jumping up and racing from the room. Harry, Alexander prompted. Can we wait until Charlie's back, please? Harry asked. I want to check something, see if what I am thinking is right before I give you whole story. Very well, Alexander frowned, and Harry knew that he'd not wait a minute longer than that to find out why a strange dragon had turned up in his reserve. The waiting was tense, with the nearly 12 dragon handlers shifting restlessly on the benches and tables surrounding his own. Even Sirius and Remus seemed intent. No one spoke, and despite himself, and more to be doing something than anything else, Harry found himself digging into his stew. The bowl was nearly half gone when Charlie came running back in. I've got it, he called. Quickly, Harry grabbed it from him before he'd even sat, unfolded it, and began speed reading. Instantly, phrases jumped out at him. The Commonwealth Green and the Hebridean Black Committee was upgraded to subdepartment status and island within the Shetland Islands Dragon Reserve of Great Britain. We anticipate locating and moving all of the dragons within Great Britain to the reserve dam, he cursed. His fears had been right. Harry, Alexander asked when he looked up. Taking a breath, Harry composed himself and dropped the letter in the middle of the table. Firstly, the green that arrived. Her name is Farley's, he began. She was one of the dragons brought in for the Triwis last November. I remember her, Charlie said. It was because of your name coming out of the goblet that we needed to go and find an extra dragon. Wed only brought the 3 with us. We made sure that she went back to her home afterwards, her and her eggs. Harry nodded. Exactly. And because she was at Hogwarts, I spoke to her after the task. When what's been happening in Britain began, she came to find me in hopes that I could help her get home again. Get home? Delilah asked. Yeah, Harry replied quickly. Here's the kicker, and if Wed thought to read this better, here he slapped the parchment letter, Wed have known what's been going on and thought about how it's affecting the dragons. They're making a new reserve, Alexander stated, and Harry could see that he didn't need to explain anything else to him. For everyone else, though, he kept going. It says it right here. The British Ministry of Magic bought up an island and warded it to make it into a new reserve. Once they'd done that, they started going out and finding all of the common Welsh greens and Hebridean blacks and have started transporting them to the island. But wards don't keep dragons in. They can get out if they want to, Anthony pointed out. Bueno that, Charlie replied, but I am betting that the mom doesn't, or at least didn't until Farley's up and flew away on them. What is it that the dragons want, Harry? Alexander asked. Harry sighed and shook his head. They're confused and scared. Farley's came here as a last-ditch resort. Dragons seeking out men for help. Has that even ever happened before? It's not unknown, Alexander replied slowly, but incredibly rare, and always only with dragons that have been in reserves for a long, long time, and only to dragon handlers who've worked with that particular dragon for decades. That's what I thought, Harry sighed. This is a big deal, to the dragons too. I think Memzath and the others are treading carefully with this too. They'll be watching to see how we react. What is it that they want from you, Harry? Remus asked. Speaker of dragons, they call me, he said. Their trusted voice, someone who speaks for dragons and to their benefit. I think they're going to trust that I make things right, and however that looks, they'll abide by what I say. So, no pressure then, Sirius deadpanned, earning him a slap on the back of his head from Remus. What can you do, though, Harry? Charlie asked. I don't know, Harry replied. Yes, I can talk to dragons, but you are all dragon handlers. You've worked with dragons for years and know them better than anyone. What do you think should be done? The dragons were happy enough in their own ways, Dimitri said. I've never heard of any problems with the wild ones that lived in Britain. I don't know if they'd be allowed to go back to where they came from, Charlie replied. Britain's Ministry of Magic can be pretty stubborn once it's made up its mind. Not to mention all of those galleons that they've just spent. Buying an island and getting it warded isn't cheap, Sirius stated. They're going to want to see some kind of return for that investment. Is a new reserve a bad thing? Delilah asked. In theory, no, Alexander asked. It may depend on who's running it. They asked Charlie, who turned them down. We don't know who is next in line. Did I do the wrong thing saying no? Charlie asked. No, lad, you dight the right thing, Alexander told him. As good as you are, you don't even have your mastery yet. They tried to recruit me last year after it became known that I could talk to dragons, Harry admitted. Talking to dragons is one thing. Running a whole reserve is a whole different bag of nifflers, Alexander assured him. What about the dragons on that island? Anthony asked. How likely is it that they'll even stay there? I can see that, if they decided to go back to their wares, the British would simply track them down and transport them back. That could easily become a vicious cycle that could easily get out of hand, especially if the dragons became violent. There'd be too many losses on both sides, Delilah agreed. Just one death human or dragon would be one too many, Harry stated forcefully. Easy there, lad. We all agree with you, Alexander said. Sorry, Harry replied. Don't be, Alexander said quickly. Being passionate about dragons isn't just a speaker thing. We all feel exactly the same. Murmurs all around him reminded Harry that that was the case. And not just here in Romania, either. Andy and the other handlers in Australia felt exactly the same way. For now, if I am reading what you've told us is right, Alexander said, nodding to Harry, we've got some breathing room. What we need to do is find out more about this new reserve, what's best for the dragons they've brought there, and if there's a way for the dragons, the new reserve, and the British ministry to work together. Harry nodded, unsure exactly how they were supposed to accomplish that. Abruptly, Alexander stood. Right. Harry, once you've eaten, get back to the dragons, especially Farley's, and see if you can buy us some time to find a solution. If this goes sidewards, it could affect not just those dragons and the new British Reserve, but all of us, including our dragons. The rest of you, you know your jobs. What about you, boss? Charlie asked. Alexander picked up the parchment containing Charlie's offer of employment and scowled at it. Me? I've got some international flu calls to make, he stated. 0v05, 15 a.m. Wednesday, 24 August 1995, Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. The bed under him felt familiar, but in a distant way, as though He should know it, but that it'd been a while since he'd woken up in it. Eyes still firmly closed in half-sleep, he frowned, trying to understand the conflicting feelings. But the mystery persisted, and nothing in his sleep-addled mind allowed him to solve it. Finally, he rolled over and opened his eyes. The bed he was in was against a wall. Directly opposite him, across where the desk stood under the window, the early morning sunlight streaming in through curtains that did a poor job of blocking it out and illuminating the dust motes that evidently filled the room, were some built-in cupboards with sliding doors. More familiarity, and he frowned. Suddenly, memory blossomed. His room. He was in his room in the little cabin that he, Sirius, and Remus had been assigned at the Romanian Dragon Reserve. Not that he'd had much chance to be in this room, he'd barely gotten settled in before their emergency jaunt to Australia. But he was back now, and he relaxed into being home. At least, he relaxed until the conversations from yesterday returned. Farley's. Her story of what was happening to her and to all the other dragons hidden across Great Britain. Alexander. The hard expression on his face when Harry retold Farley's explanation of why she'd come. Harry's own anxiety began ratcheting up, and the bed under him no longer felt comfortable. There were dragons confused, hurting, terrified. He couldn't let that stand. He had to do something. Throwing the blankets off, he rolled out of bed. Dressing was done fast, as were his normal morning routines. The force that his nimbus rocketed into his outstretched hand when he summoned it had him pausing, staring at it. Then, switching the broom to his other hand so that he could shake the sting out, he strode from the cabin. The base was quiet, empty, and Harry knew that he was the only one awake in the entire reserve. Well, the only two-legged person awake. Swinging his leg over the broom, he took off towards the top of the ridge. He lay low and brought his feet up behind him to create a smaller profile as he raced through the trees, zigging and zagging from side to side, and up and down as he avoided branches that threatened to unseat him. Many tried, all failed. And then he was up, over the crest of the ridge, and looking down into the canyon. His eyes registered the sight, even as he tipped the front of his broom over and straight down. He'd seen the dragons do it, fall from this height, and flare their wings at just the right instant to catch themselves from smashing into the hard rock below, and he was sure that he could replicate the flight on his broom. His hands gripped the shaft, his eyes narrowed against the wind as he plummeted straight down. Faster and faster, closer and closer the ground came. It was exhilarating, freeing, and he reveled in the speed and how fast his heart was hammering in his chest. Now, he screamed at himself. Pulling back hard on his broom and sitting up, his legs swinging from behind to in front of him in an instant, he leveled off his flight. For a fraction of a second, he thought that he'd misjudged it. He pulled harder, willing the broom to obey, and then he was level, the very tips of his toes scraping against the ground before the broom was rocketing straight back up again. Woohoo! He yelled with the thrill of the maneuver. And then, all at once, he wasn't flying alone anymore. Dragons of every size and species in the Weir, including the green hue of Farley's which stood out in the early morning light, were surrounding him, flying alongside him, above and below and behind. He laughed in joy, even as he greeted each of them. The hatchlings were there, diving and tumbling about in the air, oftentimes less than a broom length from him, daring him to fly harder, faster, and catch them. Harry, being the good uncle that he was, obliged, pushing his broom to its limits, as he flew rings and loops and spirals from one end of the great canyon to the other. By the time that he pulled up to a hover somewhere above Ramarant's cave, he was breathing hard, sported a grin from ear to ear, and most importantly of all, he bled off the tension and worry that he'd woken up with. He knew that it wouldn't last, that the day would begin properly as soon as he set foot in the lodge. Hopefully, Alexander would have some news or at least ideas of what to do for the dragons of Great Britain. He sighed as his mind fixed back on the problem. "Sorry, guys," he said to the hatchlings who were still flying circles around him. "It's time for me to get back and to get some work done." 0v0, 7:35 a.m. Wednesday, 24 August 1995, Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. When Harry walked into the lodge, it was to find that it was completely filled with every dragon handler in the reserve, as well as the few others that lived there, including Sirius and Remus. He wasn't sure whether it was because it was time for the day to start, or because everyone had the problem that had landed in their laps, or more accurately, flown in on dragon wings on their minds. "Morning, pup. You have a good flight?" Sirius asked. "Yeah, I did," Harry replied, running a hand through his wind-tossed hair that he knew would be 1,000 times messier than it usually was. "I don't suppose that you did a proper check on the dragons this morning when you were doing your aerial acrobatics?" Charlie asked, his eyes narrowed at Harry, who was taking a seat near him. "Well, considering that I had every dragon in the Weir flying with me at some point, then yes, I did," he replied. "Good man," Alexander said, as he came to sit opposite Harry. "Your methods are rather unorthodox compared to what we're used to, and definitely not something that we can replicate, but there is no denying that it gets the job done." Harry gave him a nod of thanks and felt a slight heat to his cheeks. He still wasn't used to praise, even if he was getting better at receiving it. "What's the word, boss?" Charlie asked. Alexander took a long sip of his coffee before sighing and sitting back in his chair. "I spent hours talking with every other head dragon handler from every other reserve last night," he said, instantly gaining the attention of everyone in the room. "And," Harry prompted, "firstly, Harry, we want to reiterate this, even though we know you know. You are contracted to the 5 dragon reserves of the world who signed that contract. No matter what happens with the new British Reserve, they have no say over what you can or cannot do or where you go," Alexander stated. "I know," Harry nodded. "But the dragons, yeah, we get that," Alexander replied. "And if it wasn't for the dragons and the bond that you share with them, then we'd tell the British Reserve to go to hell and to fend for themselves. But we're not going to do that, are we, boss?" Charlie half asked, half stated. "Yes and no," Alexander sighed. "The tricky bit is that, while we've been asked for help, or more specifically, Harris been asked for help, it wasn't by the Reserve or even the British Ministry. It was by the dragons themselves. The other head handlers and I talked ourselves in circles trying to find the best way forward." "What did you decide?" Harry asked. "We have to step in," Alexander stated forcefully. "Bueno, dragons best. We've been around them for years, not to mention Harry here who can talk to them. The consequences are too dire if we don't. We can easily see it spilling into a battle in Britain between wizards and dragons, and that'll eventually affect all of us. The dragons in our own reserves will hear about it some way or other, and then what little trust we've built up with them will be instantly gone. Not to mention the statute of secrecy," Anthony stated grimly. "If dragons start flying all over Britain, then it'll be blown out of the water. And if the wizards start hunting dragons, the dragons won't clutch. They'll be too afraid to lay eggs or raise their young. It's not like there are a lot of dragons in the world in the first place. The Catalonian fireball and the Portuguese longsnout are already close to being extinct. We don't want the common Welsh green or the Hibernian black wiped out. The memory of both Memzath and Dankram mentioning the secret, hidden species of dragons crossed his mind, and he wondered how many dragons there actually were left in the world. Probably more than the dragon handlers knew about. But that was a question for another day. Exactly, Alexander nodded. So after a long talk, we've come to a decision. Harry, as the dragons came to you and asked you for help, then we feel that we have no option but to send you to this new reserve. Get a feel for it and the dragons there. Find out if it really can be a place for the dragons to be kept safe and cared for properly. Charlie, you'll go with him, of course. Assess it and report back to us. If it's up to scratch, or at least looks like it's going to be, then all good. We'll offer some assistance. Most importantly, Harry, find out if the dragons are going to take to their new home. And if they don't, Harry asked, or if the reserve doesn't measure up, Charlie quickly added. Alexander took a deep breath, his eyes scanning over every handler there. Everyone gave a nod, telling him that, whatever was decided, that they'd back him. If it doesn't measure up and the dragons aren't going to accept it, then we're willing to take every British dragon into our own reserves. I just hope it doesn't come to that. There's no telling exactly how the dragons would react to being uprooted from Britain. Our job has always been to look after dragons and to keep them safe, and that's what we're going to do. Chapter 26. What were we doing again? Disclaimer, I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0 Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 26. What were we doing again? 9:05 a.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995, 12, Grimmauld Place, London, England. Honey. We're home, Sirius called as he walked through the door. Honey, as it turned out, was an ancient, grouchy house elf who didn't seem too pleased with the term of endearment. Master has returned, Creature stated, his tone implying that he would have been happy if Sirius had never returned in his lifetime. Hope you've been keeping the house clean, Creature, Sirius said. We've got guests. Creature sees, and again, the house elf implied that Sirius was imposing on Creature's house and time. Come on in, you lot, Sirius waved to Harry, Remus, and Charlie. The old house isn't much, but it'll keep us out of the ministry's sight until we're ready. Are you sure that you want to stay here, Charlie? Remus asked. You could always go home to the burrow. No thanks, Charlie replied quickly. We've got no idea how long we're going to be in England, and I don't think that I could handle my mother for more than a day or so. Harry had only ever met Mrs. Weasley the once, and once was enough. Shed tried to hug him and he didn't even know her. If she was like that with strangers, he shuddered to think what Shed be like with her own children. Come on up to the second level. There should be some rooms clean enough for us to use, despite Creature's lack of talent in that area, Sirius said. Creature does as his mistress commands, the elf defended himself. Your mistress is dead, Sirius barked. Your job is to do as she command. Yes, master, Creature grudgingly replied. What's the plan for the day? Harry asked as they began trudging up the staircase. We get ourselves settled, and then we go find where this new reserve is. See if we can have a look for ourselves before we make our presence known officially, Charlie said. The first floor looked as dark as the entry. The walls were grimy and almost black from age. The wooden floors were no better, and if there was a pattern on the hall runners, Harry could no longer see it. The covers over the gas lights were tarnished with age, seeming to only grudgingly share its light with the four of them. The bedrooms on the second floor were barely usable, and Harry scrunched his nose at the first one they investigated. The curtains rustled on their own, and there was a thick layer of dust covering everything. Sirius took one look at it, grunted in disgust, and promptly slammed the door shut, throwing up an impervious charm on it to keep whatever was inside the room where it was. In the end, they managed to find three that, with some judicious use of charms, were usable enough to be going on with. Sirius declared that his old bedroom was good enough for him. Harry was given the honor of getting to use Sirius' younger brother's old room, which, surprisingly to Harry, was in immaculate condition. And Remus and Charlie were given the last one, both content with the twin beds on either side of the room. There was a trunk already at the foot of the enormous four-poster bed, but Harry decided to move it out of the way into a corner before replacing it with his own. As soon as he'd done so, he quickly opened it and descended into his workroom. As expected, it was in perfect condition. Nothing had moved despite all the jostling that his trunk would have suffered in his pocket. Hedwig instantly flapped down to his shoulder, her head turned away. "Sorry, girl, I know that you don't like traveling in the trunk, but you know that you hate portkey travel even more," he said. The fact that he grabbed up the owl perch that he'd made for her from where it had been sitting beside his umbrella plant and make his way back to the ladder seemed to placate her. After placing the perch near the desk, he opened the window and let Hedwig soar out to investigate this new area that they were now in. "Harry, are you about ready?" Charlie asked from his doorway. After double-checking that the window wasn't likely to close while they were away, he nodded, summoned his broom and shrunk it, and strode from the room. A quick discussion with Sirius and Remus had the two of them deciding to stay behind and ensure that the house was livable for them, both in terms of more rooms being cleaned and there being some good edible food for meals. That meant that the initial investigation would be undertaken by just the two dragon handlers. "Shetland Islands, right?" Harry asked as the two exited the ancient House of Black. "One of the islands," Charlie nodded. "How many are there?" Harry asked. "About 100, Charlie frowned. "Then how are we supposed to find which one has the reserve?" Harry wondered. "Magic," Charlie grinned and Harry rolled his eyes. "Right, hold on to my arm. I am going to apparate us to Hogsmeade first before we make a second jump to the islands," Charlie said. Obediently, Harry stepped forward and grasped his upper arm. Then, with a feeling as though he was being squeezed through the tiniest tube, they vanished from the spot. 0v0, 10:45 a.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995, Lerwick, Shetland Islands, Scotland. They'd arrived in Lerwick, the main town and port of Shetland, just outside the main pub, it being the only place that Charlie knew. Fortunately, Charlie had foreseen the chance that they might be seen apparating in, so had cast a disillusionment spell over the two of them. Even still, the three men and two dogs who were nearby had looked around curiously, obviously trying to find the source of the crack that had been made. Charlie had quickly grabbed Harry's arm and steered the two of them away, up the nearby street and around into a deserted alley where he was finally able to dispel the charm. "I don't think I like apparating," Harry commented. "Give me a broom or a dragon any day." "It's worse when you're the passenger," Charlie assured him. "By yourself it's not so bad. Remind me to start giving you lessons once this latest crisis is over." "I can learn to do it by myself," Harry asked. "Of course," Charlie replied. "You were emancipated, remember? You're an adult with all the rights and privileges that go with it, including being allowed to get an apparition license." "Brilliant," Harry beamed. "Right, come on, this way," Charlie said. Even though the town itself wasn't large, there being only around 7,000 people living there, it still took some time before they were able to find what Charlie was looking for, a secluded spot where they wouldn't be disturbed. "You said that there are 100 islands?" Harry asked, looking out over the dark blue water that stretched out from the shore that they were standing on. "That's right," Charlie replied, pulling his bag from his back and opening it. "Then how are we meant to find the dragons?" Harry insisted. "I told you." "Magic," Charlie grinned and pulled forth a small carved statue. Harry frowned at it. In some respects, it was similar to any of the ones that he himself had carved. The big difference, though, was in its material. Where Harry used a collection of different woods, this dragon had been carved from a jet black stone that had streaks of white marble through it. "What's that?" Harry asked curiously. "This, my dear Harry, is the reason that I made sure that Sirius and Remus didn't accompany us today," Charlie replied. It's a trade secret, known only to dragon handlers, and there are only 5 in existence in the world. 5. Harry asked as something clicked in his mind. Just like there are 5 dragon reserves. Exactly the same, Charlie grinned. This one belongs to the Romanian Dragon Sanctuary. You're one of us, and in training to become a dragon handler, so Alexander gave the okay for you to know about it. Brilliant, Harry exclaimed. Then, what does it do? As you know, the wards around the reserves don't do squat for actually keeping the dragons in. They're all for show for the wizards of the rest of the world, Charlie began. Occasionally, as you know, a dragon gets out and wanders off. When that happens, we need a way to track it down. This little beauty does exactly that. Harry nodded even though he had no idea how the little dragon statue could do what Charlie claimed. He watched as he placed the statue on the ground and pulled out his wand and his shrunken broom. Best get your broom out too, Harry, Charlie advised. Unshrink it and then disillusion it and yourself and ready. Harry did as he was told even though he had no idea what had to be ready for. He watched as Charlie tapped himself on his head and his body from top to toe, simply vanishing from view. How will I know where you are? Harry asked. I can't see you. You don't need to, Charlie replied. Just watch the dragon and follow it. Harry did as instructed, staring at the tiny black and white carved dragon sitting on the ground. In Venus Draconis, Charlie intoned. Instantly, the tiny dragon seemed to shake itself loose. It stretched first one wing and then the other. Next it shook its head, neck and tail. Finally, it raised its tiny snout as though it was sniffing the air. And then it was up, flapping its tiny wings as it rose 10, 20 feet into the air. Its tiny eyes whirled green, and it took off, flying faster than Harry would have given it credit for. Quickly, he threw a leg over his nimbus and kicked off, racing after the tiny dragon. The statue was near impossible to see, even in the light of day, but that didn't stop Harry. He locked onto it and gave chase. At first, it seemed to waver about somewhat, as though it was checking direction, but then it settled onto a northwesterly course, and Harry relaxed into the flight. There was no telling exactly how far they had to fly. All he knew was that, whatever magic was imbued in the tiny flying statue, it seemed to be doing its job. 0v0, 11:55 a.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995 Sandnes, Shetland Islands, Scotland. The tiny black and white flying dragon suddenly vanishing startled Harry, and he yelled out in shock. It's all right, the still invisible Charlie called. I've just grabbed our little friend. Land down there on the headland. Harry adjusted his grip on his broom and leant forwards, quickly bringing himself in for a landing. The muffled sound of something scraping on the rocks was enough to have him guessing where Charlie had also landed. There's no one around. We might as well dispel the charm, Charlie said, even as his body began reappearing. Tapping himself on his head, Harry once again felt that unnerving feeling like egg was running down his head and body. Seeing Charlie's nod, he knew that he'd got it right. Why'd we stop? Harry asked. Because we know where we're going, Charlie replied. Papa's store. It's the only island out that way. You know that for sure? Harry asked. Charlie simply grinned even as he held up what Harry recognized as a map. No doubt about it. Harry watched as Charlie tapped the little dragon, once again rendering it into nothing more than a simple statue, and then carefully put it back in his bag. Do we know anything about what was it? Papa Smurf, Harry asked. Papa Store, Charlie corrected even as he pulled out a guidebook. Let's see. It's in the top 10 for size of islands in the archipelago and has a population of about 20. People live there. Harry asked, staring across the sea to the blob on the horizon. I suspect that they did, Charlie replied. My bet would be that the ministry either paid them to leave or convinced them to leave. That doesn't sound right, Harry frowned. It's not, but there's nothing that we can do about it, Charlie replied. From what I can see on this map, it's not a bad-size island, definitely something that would work for a reserve. Shall we go take a closer look? I like the sound of that, Harry said, already mounting his broom. Together, the two sped across the 1.5 kilometer stretch of open water. Below them, waves rose and fell, the water a deep blue despite the sunlight. Harry was focused on getting there, to find the dragons and to see if they were all right, but the closer that he came, the more that a pit of wrongness began building in his chest. It was just him and Charlie, but that didn't seem right to Harry, the two of them searching this entire area. He didn't think that they'd be enough. Maybe if there were more of them, he wondered. Yes, that sounded right. Sirius. The name burst into Harry's head and he nodded. Yes, Sirius and Remus. He thought that he and Charlie should go and get the two of them to help, but was four really enough? Harry had to wonder. It didn't seem enough. Harry had started to wonder what they were doing in England at all, just the four of them. He knew that they were searching for dragons, a search that he felt deserved more than just four people. They needed more, he decided. There were more, he knew, back in Romania. That made a lot more sense to Harry. He nodded to himself. They should return to Romania and get more people before they started this search. Decision made, Harry turned his broom and flew back the way that he'd come. Looking across, he was delighted to see that Charlie was flying beside him. Smart man, that Charlie, Harry thought. He'd obviously come to the same conclusion, but then he saw Charlie start to shake his head. He did it again, this time a lot more vigorously. Harry's eyes narrowed, and he wondered if there was something wrong with Charlie. Harry's own head began pounding, and he groaned. Land back on the headland, Charlie shouted. The idea made sense to Harry, and he pushed his nimbus harder in order to get there sooner. The instant that his feet touched down, the pounding in his head stopped, as though a switch had been thrown. What in Merlin's name was that? Harry asked. Wizard-repelling ward, Charlie grimaced. Powerful one, too. Obviously recognizing Harry's head tilt as a request for more information, he continued. It's like a muggle-repelling ward, designed to stop certain people, in this case wizards, from getting too close. Typically, they enchant you to think of something else, anything really, as long as it gets you to turn around and go away. Well, it did its job, Harry allowed. But that means that we can't get near Papa's store. No, not that way, at least, Charlie frowned. What other way is there? Harry asked. The official way, Charlie grimaced. 0v0, 12:20 p.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995, Romanian Dragon Sanctuary, Romania. Boss. Alexander looked up from the parchment that he was struggling over, in two minds between wanting to strangle Pavel, one of the junior dragon handlers, for interrupting his train of thought, or cheer him for giving him an excuse to take a break from this odious chore. Not for the first time or even the 100th time. He wondered how in the name of Merlin's saggy balls he'd drawn the short straw for writing the formal letter from the combined dragon reserves of the world to the British Ministry of Magic, offering their support and expertise in the forming of the newest dragon reserve. Of course, he knew the answer. Harry Potter. The blasted green had come to his reserve seeking the lad out, the boy who could talk to dragons, and the only person in the world who the dragons were likely to listen to. The fact that young Harry was primarily assigned to the Romanian reserve meant that, by default, Alexander himself got the dubious honor of writing the blasted letter. "What is it, Pavel?" he asked, laying the quill aside. Boss, was it just supposed to be that common Welsh green who was to fly back to Britain by herself? Pavel asked. Farley's. Yes. Why? Alexander asked suspiciously. Well, she left a few minutes ago. Only she wasn't alone, Pavel replied, and Alexander could see how stressed the boy was. Alexander sighed, closed his eyes, and counted to 10. When that didn't help, he opened his eyes and asked the question that he didn't think he wanted to know the answer to. Who else went? 3 of our dragons, Pavel replied. A horntail, an ironbelly, and a ridgeback. Once again, Alexander closed his eyes. Let me guess, Ramaranth, Grulith, and his mind came up blank. Who was the third? That young ridgeback that Charlie brought back from England a few years back, Pavel replied. I think her name was Norberta. What should we do, boss? Go after them. And how exactly do you propose that we bring them back? Alexander asked rhetorically. No, we know where they're going. Those dragons are Potter's responsibility. Let them bring them back. Do you want me to send a message to Harry? Pavel asked. Alexander grinned. Nope. The lad tends to thrive on the unexpected. Let him find out when they get there. Now off you get. I am sure that you're on potion-making duty this morning. Yes, boss, Pavel replied before promptly disappearing. Grumbling, Alexander picked the quill back up. He was pleased with his decision. If he had to write the damned letter, then Potter deserved something unexpected and unpleasant as well. Chapter 27. Opening Doors. Disclaimer: I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0 Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 27 Opening Doors. PM Thursday, 25 August 1995 12 Grimmauld Place, London, England. No. That will simply not do. Harry looked down at himself at Sirius' statement and frowned. He couldn't see what was wrong. And then he compared himself to his godfather. They were about to go to the Ministry of Magic. He knew that. Sirius had told him to dress appropriately, and Harry had. He put on a pair of jeans and a clean t-shirt, even attacked his hair as best as he could. As an afterthought, considering that they were going into the heart of Britain's magical world, he'd even put on his bottle green robes that he'd worn at Hogwarts over his school uniform. In contrast, Sirius was done up as though he was going to some stuffy high society ball. At least, that's what it looked like to Harry. His outer robes were a deep blue that looked almost black, piped with hints of silver. On his chest sat the crest of the most ancient and noble House of Black, matching his house ring, something that he was wearing today but ordinarily never put on. Under his robes was an immaculate cut-to-fit three-piece jet-black suit, offset by the links of a silver pocket watch that crossed his waist and the deep blue tie that matched his robes. "What's wrong with what I am wearing?" Harry asked. "We're only going to ask about the dragons and the new reserve. You've got a lot to learn, and it's probably my fault that I haven't really started teaching you this stuff just yet," Sirius sighed. "Impression is everything with these people. What you look like is almost as important as who you are, especially when it comes to opening doors. And today we need to get in without a fuss. We don't want to be dithered about. The more time we waste, the more chance there is for the dragons to go rogue. But I am Harry Potter," he stammered, blushing hard. "Yes, the boy who lived," Sirius nodded. "And while that might be enough to open doors, we need to make sure. You know, I hate that name," Harry groused. "But that wasn't what I meant." "Oh," Sirius asked lightly. "I am the speaker for dragons," he began, which, while impressive, won't mean a jot to these people. Sirius waved off. "Not what I meant," he replied, shaking his head. "What I meant was that I can speak to dragons. They know that. This Mathilda Grimblehawk even invited me to a meeting once to get me to work for her before they'd even made this reserve. Won't that be enough to get in?" "Maybe, maybe not," Sirius allowed. "It doesn't mean that we can't stack the deck. You need to dress up, put on your best clothes and robes. Act the part, make them stop and look at you and take notice of you and what you have to say." Harry screwed up his nose, disgusted with the idea. "I am not saying that you have to be a Dumbledore. That man may be flamboyant enough for 10 wizards, with the overly bright and glittering robes that he tends to prefer, and no one can deny that he draws the eye and makes everyone look at him and listen to him. But he has style," Sirius continued. "Sirius is right," Cub Remus said as he walked down the stairs. "Dressing up, making an impression is an easy first step to opening doors. Then once you're in, you can play the card of being able to talk to dragons. Not to mention that we know where one of their dragons is, a fact that they probably don't," Charlie added. Harry took both other men in. While neither was as well-dressed, as flamboyant as Sirius, both were sharply dressed and out to impress. "Fine," he finally grumbled. "I'll go change. Not that I've really got much in the way of good clothes to wear. Something that we need to rectify while we're here," Sirius called after him, making him grimace with the idea. 0v0, 2:45 p.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995 Ministry of Magic, London, England. As much as Harry hated to admit it, Sirius had been right. As soon as they'd stepped from the flew something that Harry managed with only the tiniest of stumbles people noticed them. Many gave them a nod or the tiniest of bows. Others deftly stepped out of their way. At first, he was sure that it was simply because they looked the part, not that any of them were recognized. At first. And then the pointing and whispers behind hands began. His ruddy scar. He'd forgotten what the blasted thing did to people in magical Britain. Worse still was the fact that the famous lightning bolt was no longer the same as when he'd left Britain. The lightning bolt was now neatly bisected by a long, vibrant bluish-purple mark, the mark of the dragons, the one that Memzath had given him, and the one that marked him for all dragons to know and respect. Of course, these wizards and witches had no idea what it meant. All they saw was the famous lightning bolt of the boy who lived, even if it had been disfigured. Wands, please, the guard who had at first looked bored, and then on the edge of his seat at their approach asked. One by one, he took each wand, waved his own wand over it, producing a tiny piece of paper that registered the composition of their wands, and handed it back. Harry wasn't entirely sure how he managed it, especially since his eyes never left Harry's scar once. Right, the lifts are that way, Sirius stated, indicating said direction with a pointed finger. Are you sure that dressing up like this was really worth it? Harry hissed at his godfather as another wizard scuttled out of their way, his eyes glued to Harry's forehead. Ah, maybe not, Sirius replied. I'd forgotten exactly how big a deal you really are around here. Harry fed at him, barely managing to keep his grumbling under his breath. Being famous around dragons was one thing, this was a whole other barrel of flobberworms. Right. The Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, which is where I suspect we'll find the Subdepartment for the Regulation and Monitoring of the Dragons of Great Britain, is on level 4, Remus stated, grasping the handle and giving it a pull. The lift didn't move as Harry had expected. Instead of going up or down, this one flew sidewards. It was all that he could do to quickly reach up and grab one of the dangling hand straps and hang on for dear life. As suddenly as it started, the lift stopped, and Harry was almost thrown from his feet. Before he could do more than rebalance himself, it plunged down, and he was forced to hold on even tighter. Finally, it stopped with Addingan the doors opened. Harry bolted from it before staring back at the gilded cage doors that were already closing. What the hell was that? He asked. Ah, magical transportation. Hate it or love it, it's all we've got, Sirius sing-songed. Hate it. Definitely hate it, Harry muttered, eliciting laughter from the other three. Together, the four of them walked the corridor, searching for the door that they wanted. There were small brass signs on each telling which subdepartment was which. Goblin liaison, house elves, centaurs, that one looked dusty, and there were cobwebs in the corner of the door that suggested that it hadn't been opened in a long, long time. Dwarves. Mermalk, another that looked decidedly unused. And finally, right near the end, they found the one that they were looking for. Charlie instantly stepped up, glanced at the brass plate, knocked twice, and opened the door before he was even acknowledged. The receptionist looked up, clearly startled by their entrance. Harry saw her eyes land on each of them in turn before darting back to Harry and then up. He sighed and bit his tongue. "Good afternoon, Miss," Charlie began. "Spencer," she replied. "Miss Spencer," Charlie nodded. "We were hoping to see Madame Grimblehawk." The girl who Harry judged as being only a year or two out of Hogwarts sat up a little straighter and obviously fell back on her training. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "Sadly, no," Charlie replied before quickly adding, "I know that we should have made one, but unfortunately, we didn't know that we needed to see Madame Grimblehawk until we were here." "I see," she frowned. "I am unsure if Madame Grimblehawk will be able to accommodate you on such short notice. If you'd care to make an appointment for tomorrow, perhaps." She picked up a quill and looked expectantly at them. "You must excuse my colleague, my dear," Sirius said smoothly, stepping forward to grin at her while leaning on her counter. "He has atrocious manners." Perhaps it'd help if we introduced ourselves. The way her eyes darted to his forehead told Harry Thather didn't need to be introduced. Nevertheless, Sirius went through the motions. My name is Lord Sirius Black. This is Dragon Handler Charles Weasley from the Romanian Dragon Reserve. My godson, Lord Harry Potter, and Remus Lupin, who holds masteries in defense against the dark arts and dark creatures. Harry only barely managed to stop himself from rolling his eyes. He was sure that Sirius was laying it on far too thick, especially adding in that Lord title for Harry himself while, yes, technically, he had the special ring that declared him as Lord of the most ancient and noble House of Potter, not to mention the other one as well. The entirety of the house consisted of him. And it wasn't as though he'd ever set foot in the Wisengamot, although Cyrus Gringers did proxy for him in that regard. If Miss Spencer's eyes had been huge before at the sight of his scar, Charlie's name had her eyes nearly popping out of her head. If you could just wait here for 1 minute. She squeaked before scurrying down the hall behind her, rapping a tattoo on the door at the end, even as she looked back at them before bustling inside. Barely a minute later and she was back, this time accompanied by a middle-aged woman who was striding purposely towards them. Mr. Weasley, Mr. Potter, Madame Grimblehawk said, zeroing in on Charlie's red hair and Harry's scar, it is indeed a great honor to finally meet you both. After enthusiastically shaking both of their hands, she turned to their companions. Lord Black, Mr. Lupin, it's nice to meet you, she said, the greeting more natural for the two men. It's good to meet you, too, Sirius replied. What brings you to my office? She asked, her eyes darting between Charlie and Harry. By any chance would it be the letter that I sent you? Perhaps we could talk somewhere more private, Remus suggested, and Harry noticed Miss Spencer hanging off of every word. Of course, she said. Please, join me in my office. At her gesture, they rounded the counter and followed her down to her office. It was a cramped little room with a desk and a pair of chairs that took up the majority of the space. The walls, not unlike the walls of Alexander's office, were covered in dragon-related material. There was a huge map of Great Britain with pulsing dots on it, an even bigger map of an island that Harry recognized as Papa Store, and dozens of magical photos of dragons, both common Welsh greens and Hibernian blacks. Against the back wall, under the clearly magical window, considering that it showed a coastal scene when they were currently deep underground in the heart of London, was a small table that had what looked like the remains of some dragon shells. As Harry and Charlie took the two offered seats, Remus pulled his wand and conjured a pair of high stools for himself and Sirius. Madame Grimblehawk waited until they were all seated before she took her own seat behind her desk. What is it that has brought you here today? She asked, sounding hopeful. I think, before we get into that, Charlie said slowly, perhaps it would be best to deal with the erumpent in the room. She nodded carefully and waited for him to continue. I did receive your letter, an extremely generous offer to become the head dragon handler of your new reserve, he said. I want to thank you for it. It was a great honor, but I must regretfully decline. I see, she replied, sounding disappointed. May I ask why? As you know, I have yet to attain my beast mastery, and even though I am close to achieving it, I know that I still have much to learn. Accepting the position here would deny me much valuable knowledge that I will need, he replied. I understand, she replied, nodding slowly. If it wasn't to accept my offer, then why did you come here? Are you aware that you are missing a dragon? He asked cautiously. She stared at him, and Harry imagined her mind whirling with questions. One of the common Welsh greens that Wed brought to the reserve somehow managed to get out. But how did you know that? She finally asked. Because she turned up in Romania, Charlie smiled. What? She practically screamed, half rising from her seat. How? Why? Her name is Farley's, Harry said gently, and she came looking for me. Madame Grimblehawk's stare switched to him, and Harry wondered how long one person could actually go without blinking. I don't understand, she finally said, shaking her head and falling back into her chair. Madame Grimblehawk, Harry said, you are aware that I can talk to dragons. Her nod was punctuated by a snort from Sirius that Harry chose to ignore. The entire magical world knows you can do that, she chuckled. Well, the day that I found out that I could do that, Ramaranth wasn't the only dragon there, he said. You and her eyes were so big that they were nearly popping out of her head now. Are you saying that the green that we lost was the same one from the Triwizard tournament? Got it in one. Sirius grinned. But why'd she come to you? Madame Grimblehawk asked, sounding bewildered. Farley's came to find me because of what is happening here, Harry replied. I don't understand, she said, shaking her head. Apparently, nor do the dragons, Charlie said, taking over. We understand that you've been rounding up all of the dragons in Great Britain and bringing them to your new reserve. Yes, she nodded, glancing at the big map. I think we've already found about half of them, which is much, much faster than anticipated. Well, apparently, the dragons themselves haven't appreciated being removed from their homes that they've had for hundreds and hundreds of years, Charlie said. Fortunately for everyone involved, instead of lashing out and attacking everyone magical and muggle alike, they decided that they should ask what was going on. Thus, Farley's was sent to Harry. What did you tell the dragon, Farley's? Madame Grimblehawk asked fearfully. What you first have to understand, Madame Grimblehawk, is that, while I am under contract to the reserves that signed my contract, this, and here Harry tapped his mark, says that I am something more. Speaker for dragons. That doesn't just mean that I can talk to dragons. It also means that the dragons themselves have decided that I am worthy to speak on their behalf. They trust me to find the facts, seek out advice if I need it, but ultimately I am authorized to decide for them and to tell humans what the dragons will agree to. Think of me as something of an ambassador. Her gaze shifted to his mark, and she stared hard at it. It really means all that. She breathed. As strange as it sounds to you, it's even stranger to me, Harry admitted. It's a huge responsibility, and one that I take very, very seriously. What does that mean in practice? She asked, her gaze dropping to lock with his. Right now, it means that the dragon's on Papa's store, and he saw her start at the mention of where the British Reserve was, not that he was going to tell her how new, will remain where they are while I learn everything that there is about you, the Reserve, and the Ministry's ultimate goal for the dragons. Eventually, though, I will have to make a decision. I am hoping that it'll be one that works for everyone, human sand dragons alike. Madame Grimblehawk's face had grown paler and paler the longer that he talked, and by the end, Harry was afraid that she was going to faint. Somehow, though, she managed to pull herself together and face him squarely, something that Harry was extremely pleased to see, especially knowing that there would come a time when he wanted to have her nose to snout with a dragon. I have only ever had the best intentions for the dragons and the reserve that I've been able to build, she stated. Brilliant. Harry beamed. That's exactly what we want to hear, Charlie said. I think it only fair to tell you that I am under orders from the other reserves to examine your reserve as well, to see how it measures up and to report back. Once again, Madame Grimblehawk rose to the occasion, this time by sitting straighter in her chair. I understand, she said. And while we are still extremely new, I am proud of what we are building. How would you like to begin? Harry and Charlie shared a look and a nod. Could we go to your reserve and have a look at it? Charlie asked. And meet the dragons, Harry added. Of course, Madame Grimblehawk agreed, pushing herself to her feet. If you would be kind enough to wait in the reception area, I'll organize a portkey and ward keys. See, pup, Sirius whispered as they walked back up the corridor. The right clothes got them listening to us so that we could get what we wanted all the easier. Harry simply shook his head at his godfather. As far as he could see, what they were wearing meant nothing. It was their names, and especially his mark, that won the day, giving them the opportunity to say what they'd practiced. Either way, now the real work could begin. Chapter 28. The boys are back in town. Disclaimer: I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0 Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 28. The boys are back in town 4:00 p.m. Thursday, 25 August 1995. Papa Store, Shetland Islands, Scotland. As soon as the portkey had released the 5 of them, and Harry had recovered from his stumble, he looked around. They were near a collection of short, squat stone buildings with thick thatched roofs. Dirt paths led from one to another in a vague resemblance of a street, and there were even some small flower gardens in evidence. It was obvious that, until fairly recently, this tiny hamlet had been inhabited. The one thing that Harry didn't feel was any pull on his magic, nor any desire to go away. He raised a quizzical eyebrow at Charlie, who moved closer and bent his head. "It's because we're inside of the wards," he whispered. "It won't affect us here." Harry nodded in understanding. "How many people live here?" Remus asked. "Before we bought the island, there were 17 muggles," Madame Grimblehawk replied. "They were all offered exceedingly generation compensation for moving." "Glad to hear it," Sirius said. "Everything that we're doing here is above board. There are no hidden tricks or under-the-table deals happening," she stated emphatically. "I would have it no other way." Harry smiled at her, very pleased to hear it. "How many dragon handlers do you have so far?" Charlie asked. For a second, she looked slightly embarrassed. "Just the one, I am afraid. And there he is now." They turned to see a middle-aged man with a full salt and pepper beard striding towards them. "Angus McNulty, I'd like you to meet Harry Potter, Charles Weasley, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin," Madame Grimblehawk introduced. "Please, it's just Charlie," the dragon handler said to both of them as he shook Angus' hand. "Mr. Potter, a pleasure to meet you," Angus exclaimed, and Harry was sure that his arm was about to fall off with how hard it was being pumped. "I've read all your articles." Harry blinked at him. "There hasn't been that many." "Don't no matter," Angus replied. "A man who can talk to yarn beasties is a man to listen to." "Charlie and Harry are here to get a feel for our new reserve," Madame Grimblehawk stated. "You're no gonna get a chance to see much. Comin' so late in the day," Angus stated, "but I am happy to show you as much as I can." "Perhaps if I could just get a chance to meet the dragons today," Harry suggested, "and then we can have a proper look at everything tomorrow." "Aye, that sounds like a plan," Angus replied. "How are you thinking of doing tha? How many dragons do you have here so far?" Charlie asked. "So far, we've managed to move 23 Hibernian blacks and 19 common Welsh greens here," Madame Grimblehawk replied. 18 greens, Angus corrected, looking embarrassed. "Don't worry about Farley's," Harry smiled. "She'll be back in a day or two." "Farley's?" Angus asked, looking at his boss for clarification. "Apparently our missing green flew off to Romania to talk to Mr. Potter," she told him. "Harry," he corrected. "Of course," Angus nodded. "With you being the only man in the world who can talk to yarn dragons, that makes sense." Pulling his broom from his pocket, Harry enlarged it and looked around the island. "Which way?" he asked. "Follow the coastline around to the west and you'll find them," Angus replied. "Most of them tend to sleep near the ocean." "Thanks," Harry replied. As he pushed off from the ground and sped off, he heard Madame Grimblehawk ask if what he was doing was safe, and while he didn't hear the answer, Sirius' barking laugh was something that could be heard for miles. Approaching dragons was never an easy prospect, even for him. Until he had a chance to speak to them, and for them to recognize his mark, then he knew that it was best to be cautious. He experienced that in Australia, where the dragons had been wary of him at first. And these dragons had recently been uprooted from their homes. They were sure to be distrustful of any human. Thankfully, these dragons weren't lying in wait, hidden beneath the sand. Instead, their bulk stood out against the grey-green grass and the grey-brown stones. Really, it was a bleak island, not that Harry thought the dragons would mind, especially if there were some sheep or something brought in to supplement what was sure to currently be a solely fish-based diet. A sleek black body was the first that he saw. Its bulk was halfway up a small hill, its head pointed down towards the sea, and its tail and wings wrapped tight against its body. Harry slowed and turned, angling in so that he was approaching where the dragon could see him. The instant that he saw the great eye change from blue to orange, he knew that he'd been spotted. Quickly, he landed, deciding that walking the last 100 meters was a much better idea than flying straight in. Hello, he called. I mean you no harm. Instantly, the dragon's head lifted, and golden flecks were added to the orange of its eyes. My name is Harry Potter. He continued. I am called Speaker for Dragons. That brought the dragon to its feet, and its wings unfurled slightly. Even more unexpected were the 5 other dragons that popped up from over the crest of the hill. Deciding that it was best to allow the dragons to approach on their terms, he stopped and placed his nimbus on the ground. He watched as the first dragon, the Hibernian Black, stalked towards him. There was something in the way it held itself that had Harry cocking his head. It appeared cautious, but with an undertone of excitement that it seemed to be trying to suppress. You are truly Harry Potter, the Black asked. Do you know who Farley's is? Harry grinned at him. Now that he'd heard his voice, there was no doubt that the Black was a male, still young, if Harry was to guess. I first met Farley's last year at a two-leg contest, where I also met Ramaranth and painted her picture. It is you, the Black exclaimed before swinging her head around and bugling loud enough to be heard on every part of the island. May I ask your name? Harry asked. I am Bremley's, he replied, and then the other dragons started arriving. First, the 5 that had been watching from just over the hill came lumbering down. Another 3 flew in from the water where Harry guessed they'd been fishing. Then in 1s, 2s, 5s, or more, the rest of the dragons flew in until Harry was completely surrounded by a sea of black and green, all trying to get a good look at him. Harry Potter. Farley said he would come. He carries the mark. Is he here to help us? Harry held up his hands to quiet them, even as he turned around in a circle. It's wonderful to meet you all, and I aim to learn all of your names, he said. I don't have a lot of time today, but I wanted to meet you and let you know that I will do everything I can for you. You bear the mark, an older Black stated. I do, Harry replied, inclining his head to the elder. It was given to me by Memzath, the were leader of the Romanian dragons, who deemed me worthy to carry it and to speak to and for all dragons of the world, wherever they may be. I treat it as the greatest honor that I've ever received. The low thrumming from the combined dragons startled him at first. It was musical and filled him with happiness and approval from the bottom of his feet up to the tips of his ears. Memzath relays his greetings to you, as does Dankram, the were leader of the Antipodean Opalies in Australia. He continued, may I know who is were leader here? Unexpectedly, the dragons looked abashed, although how Harry knew that, he had no idea. We do not have a were leader, Bremley's told him before we came here. We were scattered throughout the land, in ways of our own. I understand, Harry replied. Perhaps if we are to stay here, you can help us choose. Bremley's asked, a sentiment that once again gained the approval of the others, as evident by the dragons thrumming deep in their chests. It would be my honor, Harry replied, bowing. Until that time, may I ask which of you is the eldest dragon? The Black that had asked about his mark took a small step forward. I, Mirdes, have that honor. It is an honor to meet you, Mirdes. Harry bowed. I ask that you help me in understanding what has happened here and what you and the rest of the were would like to see happen. As you wish, Speaker, Mirdes replied. Perhaps we could start with a fly over this island so that I can see if it is suitable as a were, Harry suggested. You are wise, Speaker, Mirdes replied. The great gust of wind from all of the dragons leaping skywards, their wings beating down to help them gain height, nearly knocked Harry to the ground. Quickly, though, he picked up his nimbus, mounted, and took to the sky. Then, with Mirdes on one side of him, Bremley's on the other, and the remaining 39 dragons flying in formation above and behind him, he took a long, leisurely flight over and around the island. 0V09. 02 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, Ministry of Magic, London, England. Cornelius Fudge had barely sat in his high-backed, comfortable black leather seat when the intercom buzzer went off. He froze and stared at it with narrowed eyes. No, he thought, denying what he was sure it heralded. The standing orders that his secretary had his orders. The orders of the Minister of Magic were that he wasn't to have any appointments until at least 10 a.m., preferably 11. Now was when he was supposed to be receiving his morning tea and pastries, something that had nothing to do with his intercom. Busy zzz. He stared at it, the longer tone telling him that Elise, his secretary, really wanted his attention, most likely because of whatever or whoever it was about was urgent. When it came a third time, and this time sounding nearly twice as long as the last, he knew the answer. Yes. He asked, stabbing the button, hoping against all hope. Sorry to disturb you, Minister, Elise said, but the Undersecretary is here to see you. She says that it's quite urgent, as if there's ever a time that it's not urgent with her, Cornelius thought. He really was in no mood for her, but unfortunately, he didn't have a choice. If he knew the Toa, his Undersecretary, then she'd just stay out there annoying Elise until he let her in. Please send her in, he said, using his most jovial tone, knowing that Umbridge could hear. Moments later, the door opened to reveal the squat, pink form of his Undersecretary. Good morning, Dolors, he said. How are you this morning? Good morning, Minister. I am very well, thank you for asking, her high, girly voice answered. He considered offering her a chair, but decided against it in the hope that she wouldn't stay long. What is it that I can do for you this morning? He asked. Were you aware, Minister, that Harry Potter was here yesterday? She asked sweetly. Cornelius stared at her, repeating the words in his own mind. Harry Potter. Here. Yes, Minister, and it was only when she answered that he realized that he'd actually voiced the thoughts. I have been reliably informed that he, and those with him, visited Mathilda Grimblehawk in her office for the regulation and monitoring of the dragons of Great Britain. He did, Cornelius asked. Hope bloomed in his chest. His ministry had taken quite a beating when Potter had left Britain, and especially because he'd left after signing a lengthy contract with the dragon reserves of the world. The public had been up in arms over the boy who lived abandoning them and blamed him. Not that Cornelius had been able to do anything to stop it from happening. He'd even tried to lure him into staying by creating the department that Grimblehawk ran. After all, if the boy wanted dragons, then there were dragons right here. What was worse in Cornelius' mind was the betrayal that he personally felt. Young Harry had been thrust into the magical world quite by accident, thanks to that blasted or blessed goblet of fire. Cornelius had done everything that he could to help the boy, even going so far as to arrange to have him emancipated so that he could leave his relatives and keep his magic. Not that Potter had been grateful at all. Yes, Minister, and already Umbridge's simpering voice was starting to grate on his nerves. Do you know what was discussed? He asked. Unfortunately, no, Minister, Umbridge replied. Although one of those with him was Charles Weasley, the dragon handler that we offered the position of head dragon handler for our new reserve to. If Weasley and Potter were here, could it mean? But what if it didn't? There were simply too many unknowns and too many questions that needed answers to. Despite the time and his own standing orders, he needed to get to the bottom of this. Elise, he said, flicking the intercom open to his secretary. Send a runner and get Mathilda Grimblehawk from the dragon office down here immediately. Yes, Minister, she replied. Unfortunately, that left him alone with Dolors until Mathilda arrived. Suppressing his internal grimace, Cornelius bustled about his desk, looking for work to do so that he wasn't forced in Tasmal talk with the woman. The first report that he picked up, on cauldron bottom thicknesses, ironically written by the younger brother of Charles Weasley, was incredibly dull, and while Cornelius had no idea why it'd been written in the first place, was still 100 times better than talking with his undersecretary. A knock on his door saw him discarding the thing and looking up. Dolores had taken a seat on the opposite side of his desk and appeared to be reading a report of her own. Come in, he called. As expected, the person that he'd called for appeared. Madam Grimblehawk, thank you for coming, he said, standing and indicating the remaining chair to her. Good morning, Minister, she replied. Thank you for coming, he said. I understand that you had some visitors yesterday. Yes, Minister. Harry Potter, Charlie Weasley, Sirius Black, and Remus Lupin, she replied. Cornelius blanched. Black was back as well. The Black Proxy in the Wisengamot was bad enough. She seemed to delight in asking awkward questions, but to have the Lord Black back. He shuddered to think what that portended. Hastily, he shoved the thought aside. There were more pressing matters at hand. Can I ask what the nature of the meeting was about? He asked. It was threefold, she replied. Firstly, Charlie declined our offer to make him our head dragon handler, a disappointing outcome, but not wholly unexpected. Charlie then went on to say that he was there at the request of the dragon handlers from the other reserves to observe how our reserve is set up and how we intend on running things. What gives them any right to look into how we run things? Umbridge asked indignantly. This is the British Dragon Reserve. There is no doubt that how we operate will be superior to any other reserve in the world. There is a lot that we don't know and much that they could teach us, Cornelius countered. We're still too new to know exactly what we're doing. Mathilda nodded in agreement with him. What could they possibly teach us? Dolors snorted. Well, for one, they knew that we'd already lost one of our dragons, she replied. It flew straight through our wards, but we paid top galleon for those wards. Cornelius protested, wondering if he should be asking for his money back. And they are top-of-the-line wards, you can't get any better, Mathilda replied. But apparently wards are like tissue paper to dragons. They mean next to nothing. Impossible. Dolo stated, and Cornelius rolled her eyes at her. Is that the same with every reserve? He asked. Apparently yes, she replied. Then how do they keep their dragons? He wondered. Mathilda shrugged. The dragons simply decide to stay. It's not something that the reserves advertise. He shook his head at the revelation. I can understand that. Out of curiosity, did they say what happened to the dragon that we lost? Where it went? It went to talk to Harry, Mathilda laughed. To Potter. I did tell you, Cornelius, the boy can command dragons. We need to do something to curb him before he gets too powerful, Umbridge stated, leaning forward in her chair. He doesn't command them, Mathilda replied, shaking her head. But that does bring me to the third reason for their visit yesterday. Oh, Cornelius prompted. Because Harry can talk to the dragons, they've chosen him as the person that they're willing to listen to, she said. See, I was right, Umbridge interjected. Mathilda didn't even pause, continuing to talk while looking straight at the minister. He doesn't command them, but they're definitely going to listen to whatever he decides. At the moment, all he's doing is evaluating our reserve and talking to the dragons we've gathered, listening to what they think about being moved from their homes and if they'd be willing to stay at our new reserve. Once he's made his decision, he'll take that back to the dragons themselves. And whatever he decides, the dragons will follow, Cornelius asked. I think so, she replied. Cornelius made a snap decision. Then let him do what he's come to do. If we can get his endorsement with the dragons, then there is a much higher chance that our new reserve will succeed. Minister, you can't be serious. A shocked Umbridge declared, her high-pitched voice reaching levels that Cornelius thought only pixies would be able to hear. Why would you give him this power? Potter's just a boy who left us. We don't need him. You heard Mathilda, Dolors, Cornelius replied. The dragons listen to him. And more than that, the public will listen to the boy who lived. We need him happy and saying the right things. And saying them to everyone. Mathilda, whatever you have to do, accommodate young Harry and those with him. Offer him tour, explain everything. Maybe, just maybe, if we give him enough, this whole endeavor will pay off. Minister, Dolors protested. Dolors, he snapped. We've sunk tens of thousands of galleons into this project already, and well be spending Merlin knows how much more before it's fully operational. If Harry Potter is the key to making sure it works, then I am willing to give him what he wants. With your permission, Minister, I'll go back to my office. Mathilda asked. I have a meeting with Harry and Charlie arranged for this afternoon. Of course, he replied. Please keep me apprised of any developments. Dolors, thank you for bringing this to my attention. I am sure that you also have work to do. With that, both women stood and left, allowing Cornelius to slump back into his chair. He hoped that Elise had his tea ready. He could really use it. And after Dollar's, maybe with a splash of brandy. 0V0907 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, Greengrass Manor, Cumbria, England. It may have still been early, but it was much later than Harry had intended. That wasn't by choice, and he'd been chaffing at the bit to be here an hour ago, but for some infuriating reason, Sirius had been near impossible to wake that morning. Of course, Harry should have seen it coming the instant that Sirius had declared the night before that he was going out and might be late getting home, so don't wait up for me. Whatever Sirius night had entailed had left the man both deliriously happy and exceedingly grumpy at being forced to wake up. Unfortunately, Sirius was the only one who knew exactly where it was that Harry wanted to go. Of course, it wasn't until he'd dropped Harry off where he was now that Sirius asked why he hadn't just taken the night bus. Not that Harry'd ever heard of the thing before then. Yesterday, their first day back in Britain, they tried to keep a fairly low profile if one didn't count their jaunt through the middle of the Ministry of Magic, thus hopefully keeping the news of their return out of the papers. And that brought it right back to why Harry had wanted to be where he was an hour ago. Just in Cassith, Daily Prophet had caught wind of them and reported the news. Pulling the magical mirror from his pocket, Harry activated it. "Daphne," he called. A moment later, her brilliant blue eyes were looking back at him. "Hey, Harry," she smiled. "How are you? Have you had breakfast yet?" he asked. "I am well, Harry," she replied. "And since it's still holidays, I've been able to continue my sleep-ins. I am just about to head down to breakfast now." "Brilliant," Harry exclaimed. She cocked her head at him in obvious puzzlement. "Exactly why is it brilliant that I have yet to have my breakfast?" she asked. "Because that means that you haven't had a chance to see the newspaper," he thought, while instead saying, "Because I was wondering if you could do me a favor." "A favor?" she asked, one delicate eyebrow arching. He grinned at her and lifted the mirror up and away so that, as well as his face, it now showed a view of the land around him, and the house in the distance behind him. "Well, you see, I am kind of stuck where I am, and I was wondering if you knew the best way for me to get in," he said, his grin threatening to spill into laughter. He watched as her eyes narrowed and then widened in shock and recognition. "Harry Potter, exactly where are you right now?" she demanded. "I am standing outside some ancient manor," he replied. "I mean, it looks quite nice from here, especially all the trees and flower beds and grass, especially thegrass. It's just saw-green thatgrass." "Are you? You are. That's Greengrass Manor," she exclaimed. "You're here. What are you doing here?" "I thought you were in Romania." Harry laughed as the words and questions tumbled from her. "Daphne, Daphne," he called. "Do you think that you could let me in? I can't get past the wards." Her mouth instantly shutting preceded the image in the mirror being jolted around so much that Harry found it almost sickening to watch. "Father," he heard Daphne yell. The conversation from his end was rather muffled. Daphne, though, he heard perfectly. "Harry's at the front gate. We need to let him in." "Yes, he's really there. See." There was a brief flash of Cyrus' face before the mirror was seemingly snatched back by Daphne. "No, I don't know why he's here, but I am sure that he'll tell us just as soon as we add his name to the ward book so that he can come in." "Thank you, Father." "I'll go get Harry and bring him in." And then the mirror was jostling again, not that Harry was really paying it any attention for a few seconds later. A slim figure, her black hair trailing out behind her, was racing out the front door and down the long drive towards him. Chapter 29. How long? Disclaimer: I solemnly swear that JKR owns everything Harry Potter. Whether or not I am up to no good with her characters is for you to decide. 0v0 Harry Potter. Dragon Whisperer Chapter 29. How long? 9:12 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995. Headmaster's Office, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, United Kingdom. The boy who returned be Rita Skeeter. Yes, my dear readers, you have read that right. Our own Harry Potter has returned to Britain. Daily Prophet columnist, Harry Potter, was seen yesterday afternoon walking through the Ministry of Magic. Accompanying him were Lord Sirius Black, Dragon Handler Charlie Weasley, and Remus Lupin, a close friend of Harry's parents. While the party did not stop to engage the public, they were seen going into the Department for Control of Magical Creatures. It is speculated that their intended destination was the newly formed subdepartment for the regulation and monitoring of the dragons of Great Britain. As we are all aware, Harry Potter can talk to dragons, and as he himself has espoused in his columns, they have even allowed him to ride on their backs. It is understood that the dragons themselves have seen how special Harry is by giving him a unique status among them. It is thought that these facts, combined with the Ministry forming our own Dragon Reserve, is what prompted Harry to return. Unknown at this time is whether this is a brief visit or if, indeed, Harry and Weasley have returned to our shores indefinitely to help the Ministry's newest project succeed. Albus Dumbledore dropped the paper to his desk and spun around in his chair to stare out the window. A slight smile appeared under his beard even as his eyes began twinkling. Harry was back in England. Dumbledore couldn't be happier. Of course, the article left much to be desired. There were too many questions left unanswered, most likely due to the fact that it was a late addition to the paper. Indeed, the article itself had been almost buried on page 5. But with Harry back in England, Dumbledore saw an opportunity. He needed to get close to Harry and explain a few home truths to the boy. And this time, Harry would understand and calmly. Dumbledore could see it now. Harry arriving back on the train on September 1st, finally wearing his Hogwarts robes red and gold piping for Gryffindor. Nothing less would be suitable. He'd begin his regular classes, and once settled, Dumbledore would take young Harry under his wing for extra classes. He'd teach the boy just enough of what he needed to know. And then, when that far-off day came when Tom returned, Harry would be there, standing in the breach, with Dumbledore right behind him, ready to cast the final spell that would ultimately see Dumbledore's own flame burning brighter than ever in not just magical Britain, but in the entire world. Dumbledore reveled in what he was sure was to come for long enough to have his tea go cold. A single tap of his wand to the cup remedied that inconvenience when he turned back to his desk. Quickly drinking it, he rose. There was work to do, and a boy that needed to be found and brought to where he belonged. 0v09, 17 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, Office of the DMLE, Ministry of Magic, London, England. "Excuse me, Madam Bones, Bate," her secretary said from her office door. The head of the DMLE looked up from the report that she was reading. "What is it, Bate?" "Your paper has arrived," she said, holding up said item. "Thank you," Amelia nodded. "It is rather late this morning." "I think that's because of the article on page 5, Bate replied, having walked in and handed the paper over. "Page 5?" Amelia asked. Her curiosity piqued. She opened her copy off the Daily Prophetto said page, only glancing at the front page enough to see that there was nothing there of immediate concern, and began scanning. She found it tucked into the bottom corner. A small article, but one that had her thinking and thinking hard. "Bate," she called. "Yes, boss," Bate asked, reappearing in her doorway. "What appointments do I have this morning?" she asked. "You have the weekly senior aura briefing at 10, and you're scheduled to meet with Arthur Weasley from the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts office at 11. Other than that, your schedule is clear until 2 when you're due to make your monthly tour of Azkaban." Amelia crinkled her nose at that last. Azkaban, a necessary evil that she absolutely hated. She was certain that there had to be a better way for them to house their criminals than by subjecting them to Dementors 24/7 for years on end. No one, not even the worst criminal imaginable, deserved that torture. "I'll be cancelling my appointments for this morning," she said. "Have Shacklebolt run the Aura meeting and give my apologies to Arthur. I'll let you know about the Azkaban tour. If things go long, I might need to reschedule that as well." "Yes, boss," Bate grinned, knowing her detest for the place. "If anything comes up, Amelia said, even as she was pulling a file from the locked cabinet behind her. Have Shaq take care of it. If it's extremely urgent, send me a patronus message. Sure thing, boss, Bate replied. Amelia nodded. That was one of the best attributes of her secretary. She never asked questions, trusting that Amelia would tell her what she needed to know. Then, with shrunken file in her pocket, she strode from the room and across to the DMLE flues. Ordinarily, they were strictly used for call-outs or for auras returning while on the job. Being the head of the department, though, had its perks. Bones Manor, she called, dashing some flu powder into the fire. Instantly, green flames sprung up around her and she was whisked away. Flashes of rooms flitted by too fast for her to focus on before she came to an abrupt stop and stepped out into her own home. Mistress, Tolly, her house elf asked, popping in. Is Susan here? Amelia asked. No, mistress, Tolly replied. She left only a few minutes ago. Amelia raised her eyebrow. It wasn't like Susan to go off on her own without telling her first. Miss Susan asked Tolly to tell Mistress that Miss Susan has gone to visit with Miss Daphne and her friends, Tolly continued. If it could have, Amelia's eyebrow would have raised even higher. Indeed, and then a thought occurred. Tolly, what prompted Susan to go out today? Tolly does not know, mistress, the house elf replied. There be no owls or fireheads. Was Susan by any chance reading the newspaper before she decided to go out? She asked. Yes, mistress, Tolly nodded enthusiastically. Ah, Amelia nodded, mystery solved. We will be having guests, Tolly. Please prepare morning tea accordingly for 4. Yes, mistress, Tolly said before popping away. The fireplace bursting into life and those flames turning green startled Amelia, especially as she was just about to make a flu call of her own. Quickly, she schooled her face. Ah, Amelia. Good, you're home, the head of Cyrus Greengrass remarked. I trust that my returning home from work is the same reason that you're calling, she asked. If you mean the young man sitting at my dining room table, then yes, he replied. That answers the question of whether the article was accurate, Amelia stated. Do you have time to come for a visit? I was hoping that you'd ask, Cyrus grinned. A second later, his head disappeared, only for his entire body to appear moments later. Are you thinking that it's time? Cyrus asked hopefully, a sentiment that Amelia understood, considering that the man's daughter had been placed at the bottom of the Black Lake in February, with the culprit getting away on a mere technicality. Yes, I do believe that it is, she grinned ferally. Could I do you the favor of calling the Lady Dowager Longbottom and Mrs. Tonks? He asked. Please, she nodded. We have much to do today. 0v0, 10:30 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, the Atrium, Ministry of Magic, London, England. Cornelius Fudge looked over the small crowd and nodded. It wasn't a bad size considering that it'd been a last-minute idea to get out ahead of the news. He'd hoped, in vain as it turned out, that he could be the one announcing Harry Potter's return to their shores. Unfortunately, Skeeter had beat him to it, even if her article had been mostly speculation. He scanned the crowd again, in case of any last-minute additions. Already, he recognized a couple of reporters from the Daily Prophet, including that annoyance, Skeeter, 4 from international newspapers, and for some reason, the oddball Lovegood, all lined up in front of the podium. Finally, though, it was time, past time really, and the reporters were starting to get fidgety. Taking a breath, he stepped up to the wand that Woodson Araushi's voice to ensure all of the reporters would hear. Good morning, he began, pausing in hope of getting some reply, something that, once again, failed to come. As you are all aware, Harry Potter, the boy who lived was reported to have returned to Britain and was seen walking these halls yesterday. I would like to confirm that those rumors are true. How does this visit from Mr. Potter fit in with the contract that he signed with the Dragon Reserves? Marcus Wainsbury, one of Thedley Prophet reporters, asked. I am glad you asked, Cornelius smiled. Harry, of course, signed a contract with Alof, the Dragon Reserves of the world, and it just so happens that we have a brand new Dragon Reserve here, the British Dragon Reserve, which is located in Scotland. Harry has arrived to help consult the department setting up our new reserve and to ensure that it is the best reserve in the world. Does Mr. Potter being able to use his parcel tongue ability to talk to the dragons factor into his role here? Grant Edwards from Thenu York Magical asked. Indeed it does, Cornelius beamed. Our reserve will be the best in the world, considered so by all Magicalson dragons alike. Harry is in consultation with our dragons to ensure that they are happy and healthy. What type of dragons do you have in your reserve? Xenophilius Lovegood asked. Common Welsh greens and Hibernian blacks, Cornelius replied. It is my understanding that young Harry wasn't alone on his visit here, Rita Skeeter stated. Can you comment on his companions? Of course, Cornelius smiled. Although Harry is an emancipated adult, something I, myself, helped push through last year, he is wise enough to understand that he needs some guidance. To this end, Harry's godfather, the Lord Black, was traveling with him. He was also accompanied by Charlie Weasley, a dragon handler of excellent standing. Mr. Weasley has been working at the Romanian Dragon Reserve for some years now, and we have approached him to head up the reserve here at home. Cornelius saw no reason to tell them that Weasley had turned the offer down flat. How long will Mr. Potter remain in Britain? Wainsbury asked. As long as it takes to ensure that we have our reserve up and running to everyone's satisfaction. Longer if we can convince him to switch his main base of operation to here. After all, Harry does love his dragons, and we have some of the best breeds in the world. Cornelius replied. I have seen the article and photograph of the magical creature called a bunyip in Harry's column, Xenophilius commented. Is there any truth to the rumor that Harry is searching out other magical creatures as well? Perhaps the crumple-horned Snorlack, or even using his parcel-tongue abilities here in these very holes to talk to the Rotfangs. Cornelius stared at the man. Where he came up with these ideas, no one knew. How he was even able to get journalism credentials was a bigger mystery. I am afraid that that's all I have time for today, Cornelius said in lieu of a reply. I am due to tour our new reserve this afternoon, and I don't want to miss it. With a wave and a hearty smile, Cornelius stepped away from the podium, popped his green bowler hat on, and strode in the direction of the lifts. He needed to go see Grimblehawk and convince her to give him a tour of the reserve that afternoon. After all, he'd just told the press that he was doing it, and he didn't want them to think he was lying. 0v0, 11:30 a.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, the Three Broomsticks, Hogsmeade, Scotland. Harry stepped from the flue, stopped, turned back, and stared at the thing. He hadn't stumbled or tripped or anything. Maybe he was finally getting the magical transportation thing down. Is everything okay, Harry? Daphne asked. Yes, very, he grinned at her. Look, there's Hermione and Neville, Susan exclaimed. The next thing he knew, Harry's hand was grabbed, and the excitable girl was pulling him and Daphne across the room, weaving around tables and chairs. Neville saw them first from the booth that he was sitting in across from Hermione and lifted his hand, waving them over. Hey, Nev, Harry said, getting his hand back from Susan so that he could shake the other boy's hand. Hey, Harry, great to see you, Neville grinned. Harry, it's so wonderful to see you, Hermione exclaimed, jumping from her seat and attacking him with a powerful hug. What are you doing here? In Britain, I mean. Is it because of the new Dragon Reserve? Do the dragons like it? How long are you staying? Hi, Hermione, I've missed you too, Harry laughed. Sit before you start answering all those questions, Daphne said, giving him a slight push towards the bench seat where Neville was sitting. Obediently, Harry slid in after taking off the pack on his back and made sure to pull his girlfriend in after him. Susan managed to squeeze into the opposite side ahead of Hermione. Well, Hermione asked. As you can tell, Hermione hasn't changed a bit, Neville commented. Right, quick story, Harry began and hurried on, seeing Hermione about to protest the notion of quick. The Welsh Green from last year's Triwis turned up in Romania wanting to talk to me. It seems the dragons here are a bit put out by being dragged from their ways to the new reserve and wanted me to come sort things out. I am not sure how long it'll be here, a week or two, I'd guess. A dragon just turned up to talk to you, Neville asked incredulously. Does that happen often? More than you'd think, Harry grinned. Ask Daff. She saw what the dragons were like when she came to visit me in Romania. Yes, before you went rushing off to Australia of all places, she mock grumped. Daphne told us about that, Hermione said. Was that creature in your column really a bunyip? Yep, Harry replied. Nasty thing. Just looking at it was enough to give me nightmares. What happened to it? Neville asked. The dragons flamed it, Harry replied grimly. At least you got to meet some new dragons, Daphne said. Those opalais were beautiful. How do you know? Susan asked. Daphne and I have some special magical mirrors that allow us to talk to each other, Harry replied. Sirius gave them to us. Like a telephone, Hermione asked curiously. Better, Harry grinned. They're a mirrors. You can't see the other person in them while you're a talking to them. And Harry showed me the opalais. I even got to ask them some questions. Of course, Harry had to translate for us, but it was amazing. Daphne recounted. Which reminds me, Harry said, pulling his bag up onto the table. Souvenirs, souvenirs. You brought us something back from Australia. You didn't have to do that, mate. You already sent me those brilliant magical plants from Romania. That was for your birthday, Nev, Harry replied. Here, add this to your collection. Neville took the ordinary-looking bucket from Harry and peered inside. I've got no idea what it's called, Harry told him. All I know is that it lives underwater and that it glows and cleans the water really quickly. I put it under a stasis charm to preserve it for you. Wow, Harry, thanks, it's brilliant. I can't wait to get it into my greenhouse and experiment with it, Neville gushed. And for you three ladies, Harry said. The instant that the opali scales hit the light, they shone, reflecting a bright, opal sheen all around them and the booth that they were in. Opali scales, Harry said unnecessarily as he handed one to each girl. My friend Zanzan donated them to you, they're a from his hide. Harry, they're a beautiful, Susan breathed. Thank you so much, Harry. I don't know what to say, Hermione gushed. Daphne took one look at hers, ran a hand over it, and then twisted in her seat, turned his face towards him, and gave him the longest, tenderest kiss that they'd ever shared. Oi, get a room, you two, Neville Mark groused. Just cause you're a jealous, Harry replied when he finally came up for air. Any other comments were interrupted by the arrival of the owner of Thethry broomsticks. Harry noticed her eyeing the opali scales, but she was discreet enough not to say anything about them. What can I get for you today? Madame Rosmeter asked. Butterbeers all round and a shepherd's pie for me, Harry began. Oh, and I'll be paying for everyone. Harry, you don't have to do that, Hermione protested. I know, but I want to, he replied. I've missed you guys, and I haven't been as great a friend as I should have been. Definitely nowhere near as many letters back to you as there should have been. Neville snorted. Well, for all of us except Daphne. Exactly as it should be, the girl in question replied haughtily. I would like the same as Harry, please. A few minutes later, the orders had been taken, and Madame Rosmeter bustled off to fulfill them. So, tell me everything. What's been happening with you guys? Harry asked. Done anything exciting on your holidays? Harry, mate, you talk to and ride dragons on a daily basis. Nothing we do is as exciting as that, Neville replied, shaking his head. Everything you guys do is exciting to me. I grew up Muggle, remember? Harry reminded him. Now, quit stalling and tell me everything. 0v02:00 p.m. Thursday, 26 August 1995, Papa Store, Shetland Islands, Scotland. You're a late. Charlie frowned even before Harry had finished making sure that he wasn't going to fall over after the portkey released him. Give the kid a break. He was with his girl, Sirius retorted. Harry, Remus asked. I am sorry, Harry replied, feeling completely unrepentant. I know that I should have been here half an hour ago. I just got caught up with Daphne, Neville, Susan, and Hermione. Surely you can remember being his age? Sirius asked. It wasn't that long ago. What did I miss? Harry asked, eagerly stepping past Sirius to join Charlie, Madame Grimblehawk, and the Minister for Magic. Harry, my boy. Good to see you again. Cornelius Fudge exclaimed, coming forward to shake Harry's hand and give him a clap on his opposite shoulder. Minister Fudge, Harry nodded, before shooting Sirius a confused expression. Minister Fudge is here to see the progress of the reserve and to find out how the dragons are settling in, Remus informed him. I spoke to the dragons briefly yesterday, Harry said. They're A-OK at the moment, but withholding judgment on whether Papa Stour will make a good weir or not. Weir? Fudge asked, looking to Madame Grimblehawk for clarification. I am sorry, Minister. I don't know that term, she told him. It's the draconic word where a dragon lives, Charlie supplied. It can be as simple as a single dragon's bed or cave, or broad enough to encompass what we would call the entire reserve. Where? Fudge repeated, rolling the word around in his mouth. Where? I like it. Suddenly, he stepped towards the large wooden trestle table that they were gathered around and picked up a quill. Then, after dipping it in an ink pot, he leant over the big map of the island that was stuck to the table, crossed out a word from the top of it, and scribbled in its place. Dragon Weir of Great Britain, he said, looking exceedingly proud of himself. No other reserve has that word in their name. This will set us apart while also acknowledging the dragons that live here. Harry was impressed. He had no idea whether it was a purely political stunt or something designed to gain favor with him. Either way, he didn't care. As Speaker for Dragons, he was more than happy to endorse the name change. I think the dragons will be honored that you have chosen to use their term, Harry said, offering a bow, much as a dragon would. I am delighted to hear that, Cornelius replied, almost strutting with how pleased he looked with himself. What else did the dragons have to say yesterday? Charlie asked. They're not completely happy with the lack of caves or protected valleys where they can sleep, Harry replied. The island's fairly flat in that regard. For now, it's not so bad, but come winter and I can see problems. They'd also prefer more variety in their diet than just fish. If and we bring in some flocks o' sheep or goats or even some coos, what will stop thaw dragons from eating them? Angus asked. In Romania, we have fields separate from the dragons where we maintain herds, Charlie replied. Every 4 or 5 days, we bring in enough for the dragons to eat. With this being an island where the livestock are only supplementing the fish that the dragons catch, you could stretch that out to every 10 or 12 days. I am not sure that there is enough room on the island for both dragons and livestock, Madame Grimblehawk said uncertainly. But there are a number of small, uninhabited islands not far away, Remus pointed out. Could you use 1 or 2 of them? They wouldn't even have to be as heavily warded if all they're used for is to house animals. Once you have enough animals, it would be fairly self-sustaining, Sirius added. Seeing Fudge slowly nodding at the idea, Madame Grimblehawk added extra notes on a side piece of parchment. From what little I've seen so far, your biggest problem is manpower, Charlie said. You have Angus here, who knows his stuff, but even he will admit that he's nowhere near enough to run this place full-time. Depending on how many dragons you end up with, you're going to need at least a dozen men, possibly as many as 20. How many dragons are there in Great Britain? Harry asked. We've found and transported about 60% of them so far, Madame Grimblehawk replied. From what I am told, there are another 17 or 18 still to be brought here. So, around 70 dragons altogether once they're all here, Remus mused. To start with, Harry added quickly, thinking of not only 4 rambunctious hatchlings in Romania, but a clutch of eggs on heated sand. The lad's right, Angus nodded. If and we want this place to succeed, we need to be expecting a mess o' little uns eventually. He's right, Charlie nodded. If I was you, it'd be aiming for closer to 20 handlers here. You've already got much of the infrastructure in place. All you need to add in is a big hall or something with some offices and a communal place to eat. Will we really need that many? Fudge asked. Surely a smaller number would work, especially with Harry here to translate any problems between the dragons and wizards. Harry and Charlie shared a look. They'd wondered when that would come up. Minister, my contract doesn't include this reserve, Harry stated. Fudge started and stared at him. But you signed a contract with all of the dragon reserves of the world. No, I didn't, Harry countered. I signed a contract with the 5 dragon reserves that were named in the contract. This reserve didn't exist when the contract was written that Harry signed, Charlie added. But Fudge protested weakly, suddenly looking rather unsure of himself. Minister, I am the speaker for dragons. That means that I will be visiting and checking up on all the dragons of the world, no matter where they are, including here, Harry said, offering him a lifeline. I just won't be here very much. A far-off bugling snapped all of their heads to the left, and Harry cocked his head, listening hard. Harry, Charlie asked. The broad smile that had appeared when he caught what was being said by the dragons changed into confusion. Farley's is back, he said. But she's not alone. Not alone, Charlie asked. Harry's eyes locked with Charlie's. No, the dragons are welcoming fur dragons to the weir.